Hi there. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm Ann Taylor Pittman, Executive Editor at Cooking Light, and I'm going to share with you today a really fun idea for Father's Day. And if you don't want to use this recipe or this idea for Father's Day, then it's great for a weeknight because it takes place in only 20 minutes. It's a 20-minute steak dinner, start to finish, 20 minutes. Ideally, you would do it on an outdoor grill. A, because the flavor is going to be really great that way, and B, because an outdoor grill will have a lot more surface area for you to cook on. But today I'm showing you in a cast iron grill pan that I already have some of the food going in, so I'm going to be doing things in batches, but just think if you're working on an outdoor grill, you'll have a much larger workspace to work with, and everything can kind of go on around the same time. You can just load more food onto the grill. So the recipe is steak and veggies with Zesty Chimichurri. So chimichurri is an herb sauce. It's an all-purpose sauce. I end up making it about once a week at least during the summer. It's great on grilled meats. It's great on grilled vegetables. It's great on just about everything. So I'm starting with some beef tenderloin steaks. They are a little pricey, but hey, it's for Dad. So, you know, we're going to splurge a little and go with beef tenderloin steaks. About 4 ounces each because we want to keep our red meat portions in check. So, and that also, you know, helps honestly with the cost. I'm going to set these aside for just a second and talk about the potatoes. So I have 1 1/4 pounds of Yukon Gold potatoes that I cut into wedges. And then what we do to kind of jumpstart the cooking process is I covered this with plastic wrap, vented it by poking a hole in it, and microwave for 6 minutes. And what that does is it par cooks, or a little bit more than par cooks. It kind of mostly cooks the potatoes, so that then we just finish them on the grill. So I have some going in the grill pan. Let me go check on them and see how they're doing. They're getting some nice grill marks. We just want a little bit of that char, that kind of wonderful crusty exterior, and those grill marks that make food so delicious. And it's really great on potatoes, not just the meat. Okay, so let me give these a turn. Those are almost ready to come off. Again, if you're working on your outdoor grill, you'll have more space and you can load it up with the 3 components: steak, potatoes, and squash. Now the thing that pulls everything together is this chimichurri sauce, which I'll show you in just a minute. We have a very simplified version of it. Super, super simple. Okay, those are almost ready to come off. Okay, we got our steaks, and then I'm just going to get, you know what, let me hold off. I think these potatoes are just about ready. Let me go ahead and pull the potatoes off the grill and get the steaks going.
And we have a question.
Oh, great.
Is it important to use, you mentioned Yukon Gold potatoes, is it important to use those particularly, or would another kind of potato work?
That is a great question. So Yukon Golds, one of the reasons we use them is for the buttery flavor, but there's a really practical reason for using them also, which is that they don't get quite as soft as russet potatoes would, so they hold up really well on the grill. If you use a russet potato or a baking potato, it might be so tender that it would tend to crumble and fall apart on the grill as you're finishing the cooking. But that said, red skin potatoes are kind of waxy in the same way that Yukon Golds are, so those would work really nicely. Okay, let me just get these on. Okay, get a fresh set of tongs. Okay, and while those are going, I'll get the squash ready. So we're just using yellow squash. It's summer. You could use yellow squash like this, or if your markets don't have any that look good, you could use zucchini. You could use eggplant, really, if you want. Any sort of summer veg would be great. I'm using about 1 pound, cutting it into slices. And it's really kind of nice because the colors kind of look really nice together here with the sort of buttery color of the Yukon Golds and then the yellow color of the squash.
And we have another question.
Great.
So Jackie wants to know why use beef tenderloin instead of a different cut of steak?
So we're using tenderloin just because it's a lean cut of beef. It's also incredibly tender, so you don't need to do a lot to it to make it really great. You could definitely sub in a different type of steak. This is kind of a splurge, like I said, for Father's Day, so we're going with a really premium cut. It is a little expensive, so you could go with something less expensive, like a flank steak or a skirt steak, and grill that up about 4 or 5 minutes on each side and just slice them really thinly across the grain. That would work fine. Sirloin steaks would work great. New York strip steaks also would work great. But we're just doing something a little special here for Dad. Okay, so those are ready to go. I'm gonna give the steaks another minute or two, 3 to 4 minutes, typically on each side should be enough. Let me get the chimichurri ingredients going. So our chimichurri today is just gonna contain 3 ingredients: cilantro, garlic, and olive oil. Well, plus salt and pepper, but I'm not really counting those. You can find versions that incorporate parsley, that incorporate oregano, red pepper flakes. All of that would be great, but this is a pretty just kind of basic, simple, bare bones version because, you know, Father's Day is on a Sunday. That's still kind of a school night. It might be a busy night for you, so we're just pared it down and made it very simple. The flavor is going to be incredible. Even if you don't like cilantro, somehow in this type of sauce, the flavor feels different. But if you're really opposed to cilantro, just use parsley. It will be great. Let me go flip these steaks over. Should have a nice sear. Oh yeah, those look good. Those look really, really good. Okay. And then in just a minute, when those come off, I can get the squash on there to finish. Okay, so I have my cilantro in here. I'm using a 1/4 cup of olive oil. That's 2 cups of loosely packed cilantro. Again, you can use parsley if you don't like cilantro. If you have an herb garden and you want to throw in some other herbs, you can try adding a tablespoon or 2 of oregano. I actually literally did that just last night. It was lovely. I added some red pepper flakes to mine too. This is 1½ tablespoons of garlic. It ends up being about 3 medium to large cloves. I've kind of coarsely chopped. I don't have to chop them very finely because they're going to get blended up in the food processor. And then about 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt and 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. And then I'm just going to process this, pulse it up. It's going to get nice and sort of, we're not looking for, it's going to get nice and chunky. We're not looking for a super smooth puree. It's not going to get like that, but we want it to be sort of saucy. We don't have a ton of liquid, so it's not going to be a loose sauce, but more of a chunky sauce. I'm just scrape down the sides of the bowl a little bit, and then I'm going to work it a little bit more. And you know what? I might have had a little bit more cilantro than what we used in testing. I want it just a little bit looser, so what I'm going to do is add just about a tablespoon of water. You could add more oil if you don't mind, you know, adding a few extra calories and a little bit of extra fat, but water works just fine too. Okay. And that is lovely. Okay, let me kind of tidy up here a bit. I'll get that out of the processor in just a second. I'm going to pull my steaks off though, because they should be about ready. I like mine to be about medium rare. You could definitely cook yours longer if you like them medium, more on the medium side. That looks awesome already. So look, won't Dad be happy? I know it's kind of cliche to do a steak dinner for Dad, but I don't know. I find that the stereotype kind of holds true. My dad and my husband is a dad as well, they love steak. So I think this would be a nice dinner to make for your dad or your husband or, you know, whatever dad you want to celebrate. Okay, I'll just cook about half of the squash. This is about half of the potatoes. I didn't cook all of them. Again, if you're working on your outdoor grill, you're going to have more space and be able to fit more on there at a time. So I'm just going to clear these out of the way and show you what this chimichurri sauce looks like. Okay, so this is probably way too big a bowl, but that's okay. So this is just a lovely, bright green sauce. It is garlicky. It is fresh. Like I said, it's somehow blending cilantro with olive oil and garlic makes it taste a little bit less like cilantro and a little bit more like just the most wonderfully fragrant, herby. Like I think sometimes people can't even guess that it's cilantro, oddly enough. Okay, so that is looking good. Let me go see how the squash is doing. That's our last component, and then I can plate up these dinners.
And we have a quick question.
Great.
How long will the chimichurri sauce last?
That is such a good question. So when you make the chimichurri sauce, so right now you see it's bright green, beautiful bright green. It will tend to oxidize the longer it sits, and it will turn a little bit more kind of army green. Now you can help minimize, if you want to make it ahead, you can try to minimize that by pressing some plastic wrap directly on the surface so that no air can get to it. But it's still going to tend to kind of turn army green and kind of get a little bit brownish the longer it sits. I would recommend not making it any more than just, an hour or two in advance. That said, I always have leftovers. I don't mind the color. The flavor still stays very vibrant. So for example, right now I have leftovers from last night. I'm going to use them for tonight's dinner. I just know that the color will be compromised, but the flavor is not. So in an ideal world, you make it just an hour or two in advance. Okay, we're just about ready here. Let me go ahead and start dishing up some of the components. Hold on one second. Let me grab a spoon for this chimichurri. So make dear old Dad really happy with the steak dinner, and make yourself happy because you didn't have to slave over it for too long. This is a wonderful dinner that has steak, potatoes, and vegetable with a wonderful sauce that kind of ties everything together. And it's all done, again, if you have a big cooking surface, in only 20 minutes. I love the grill marks here on these potatoes. Really adds to the flavor. I have a little bit of salt and pepper left. I'm going to sprinkle that on at the end over the squash and the potatoes. And then this chimichurri sauce will go over everything. Okay. All right, let me just dish up the squash so you can see how it all comes together. See what I said about the colors kind of creating this monochrome story? I love that. And the steak, of course, brings in a different color element, but it's a really nice looking plate. Okay. Now you can plate this up and have this at the table, or set this out at the table and let people drizzle with the chimichurri the amount that they want themselves, or you can go ahead and plate it with the sauce. Okay, a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. I think my friends here in the studio are excited to eat this when we're done filming. I know I'm excited to try. Okay, and here goes the sauce. I'm going to put some on the steak. I love it. It's great on potatoes. It's great on the squash. I'm telling you guys, this stuff is so good. And cilantro is so cheap. It's a great basis for an herb sauce. I consider it, I probably make this more than pesto in the summer. Cilantro is super cheap, it's super abundant, and super affordable. So that's it for today. We have, what's the name of this recipe again? Steak and veggies with zesty chimichurri, a really fast dinner you can make for Dad, or that you can make any night of the week, especially in the summer when the summer squash is so great. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please come back next week. If you're watching on Facebook, please share and please like this page or post. And then if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe so you'll get notifications when we go live. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week.